What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. This morning I was on the Classic Life podcast again with Sarth. We decided to break down all of these buffs and nerfs that happened last night, and then we made a tier list. So I'm uploading the full VOD of the podcast here for you guys to watch. So without further ado, guys, enjoy.
Welcome all back to the Classic Life podcast. Shout out to my boy Crix. It's his birthday right now, so he's probably dealing with a little bit of last night's partying. But we do have the legend back on here again, Hammerdance, who's been pumping out all of the Season of Discovery content. And today we are going to talk all of the new changes that just came out last night about the class changes and adjustments, buffs, nerfs for Season of Discovery, as well as we're going to do a tier list ranking all of the classes. What's the best? What's the worst? It's all kind of speculation, all kind of opinion, but we do have a pretty good estimation at level 25, especially from players that are the biggest theory crafters, or players that are the best players in the world. So with that being said, Hammerdance, welcome back to the stream, man. How you doing this morning? Are you excited? What are you going to be playing, and what are your thoughts just in general about what happened yesterday?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be back. My thoughts are, I'm a little bit upset about some of these changes, but to be honest, most of these changes happened for good reason. It was a little too crazy, and I think really all this is just it's toned down to a level that it's going to be balanceable to some extent at this point. So yeah, a little sad about the Ret Paladin nerfs, but we'll get into that because that's I was pretty pumped. I was most likely leaning towards playing Ret Paladin on launch, but I think I'm going towards Warlock now. So yeah, pretty excited for that, and I'm excited to dive into these changes, man.
You were super hyped on Ret Paladin last time, and we talked about it. You were like, I just can't. I'm gonna run around Ashenvale with a Druid as my pocket Wind Fury. I'm gonna one shot everybody. So the changes don't really stop you from being able to do that, but it does make sense that you're leaning towards Warlock because of the nerfs that went out. And I guess we should talk about it first. We should definitely talk about it first before we start ranking any of the classes. So let's start talking specifically with Paladin. The Ret Paladin changes that came out last night. Crusader Strike up from a 4-second cooldown to a 6-second cooldown. This was basically hitting with 75% of your weapon damage every 4 seconds and giving you 2% mana back. That was
too strong.
Yeah, dude. What? That was
a little bit too strong.
You literally never went and you were able to use that as a holy paladin, as a tank paladin even, and never go You could use that as a Ret Paladin, obviously, and it was proccing your seals as well. And we're not sure if it's still going to be doing that, but this was also proccing the big one that had a complete rework, which was Seal of Martyrdom, which was the seal that essentially added permanent AoE to you. If you guys can see it on the screen, I know it's a little bit small. I'll try and make it larger. Okay, there it is. So this seal used to have every time you hit, up to 3 targets were also hit for 30% of your damage, and this could crit, and this would also proc off of that Crusader Strike. So you're literally consistently just proccing just so much AoE damage. It was really powerful. We even saw Svan hit for 800. I think the highest one I found when I went back is like 847 damage in one weapon swing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think there was going to be anything that was going to compare to this when it comes to cleave. But like, you're right, these changes really don't affect PvP much. This is more, PvE, DPS. But yeah, that no longer being a cleave, I think it's a good thing because you do still have Divine Storm, right? So you're still going to be doing a ton of cleave. And what's the cooldown on Divine Storm? Is like
10 seconds.
10 seconds?
I think, I believe it's 10 seconds. I was doing all the calculations on like DPS numbers recently. Yeah, Divine Storm should be 10 seconds. But so Seal of Martyrdom now, instead of it actually being like a consistent AoE cleave, what it does is it returns mana. It's more of like a mana seal. It hits for 30% of your weapon damage on one target, but it gives you back mana, and it also gives your entire party and raid back mana. So this is like kind of a nice thing. And they did also make a change for shamans to have a similar situation, which also I would say is nice because it would kind of scuff you if only one of like Alliance got a mana regen and Horde didn't. So shamans on their shamanistic rage, it now also returns mana, which is like a pure buff. Like they didn't see any nerfs to the shamanistic rage. It just also returns 10% of the damage you do as mana to everyone in your party in raid. So this is going to be really nice for shamans. Past that though, so that nerfs your AoE damage as Ret Paladin. Ret Paladin was realistically, they were like double the damage of everyone else throughout the dungeon, and they needed to be reined in. They like, I even talked to some people at Blizzard, and they were like, even there, it was like Ret Paladin was actually double everyone's damage. So so they needed to actually be reined in. Sorry, Sven. I'm linking this in the Twitch chat so everyone can click on this link as well. Beacon of Light for Paladins also had its range reduced from 60 yards to 40 yards. This literally means nothing to you. Don't worry about it. It's like if you were at 60 yards, the person that you would set Beacon on, you could like set it on your tank. They could be in the other room and you'd be healing over here and it'd still be healing them. So it doesn't really change anything. And the other change for Paladins is that Divine Sacrifice, when you use it, to absorb the damage that's going out on the raid, you can't also just bubble yourself, so you take no damage. The next biggest nerf is to hunters. Hunters had two things that on our last podcast, I remember telling you, I was like, these are busted and they have to be changed. The Lone Wolf rune, which was giving you 25% increased damage, just static 25% damage if you didn't use a pet, was reduced to 15%, and the sniper training rune, which was giving you 30% crit, is brought down to 10%. I still think these are really strong. Personally, they're still really, really good to use. The thing is, the Lone Wolf talent was only going to be used in PvP. Well, not only, most of the time used in PvP because you have to use your chest rune to get Blessing of Kings. So it is a big nerf, but I think it doesn't actually rein Hunter down from being like really, really good. It brings them down like kind of with Ret 2 to being like one of the top classes instead of being like absolutely stronger than everything else.
I mean the bigger gut punch here is definitely the sniper training nerf, and I know you were planning on playing Hunter. So how do you feel about that, losing that 20% crit chance?
I had a very strong feeling it had to be brought down. Like 30% crit chance, just pretty like on top of whatever crit chance you have, there's also another rune that could give you 5% crit chance. Like you would crit everything. You straight up just crit everything, which is overpowered. It's not fair. Like at level 25, thinking about it in PvP, you like legit delete everyone if you crit either way. And it's interesting because the one per class you probably wouldn't insta delete, I guess, is any of the ones using tank runes, but it's like the warlock now with their tank rune. So it's on your shot abilities, not your normal auto attacks. It is on your shot abilities, which is, I still think it's very strong. I think Hunter is going to do incredibly well in open world PvP. I think they're still one of the strongest classes in PvE, but it does bring up some of the other classes. So like Ret and Hunter getting these nerfs, I think were absolutely necessary. I think, as we talked about last time, Ret and Hunter were in their own world. Ret was really in its own world, and Hunter was up
like
there.
S+ tier.
Yeah. Ret was out here just like deleting everything, right? So I think it reins things in. I think it's nice. The other changes really fast before we even talk about ranking things at all. Druids getting some buffs. Their wild growth heal now has a much larger range and almost more than double the healing, which I think is really nice. Druids also with their Skull Bash, their interrupt, if you are a feral druid, it shares a CD with feral charge. I don't think that changes anything. Really?
No. That was to be expected, in my opinion.
Me too. I always thought it would be shared with feral charge. The buff to wild growth is nice. 15 yards to 40 yards is huge.
When I was looking, doing my druid video, and I was like, reading Skull Bash and Feral Charge, I'm like, wait a minute, so you have 2 charges now? It just didn't make sense to me. So I'm not sure if this was like intended and maybe they just forgot to put it in the tooltip, or if it is an actual change. But yeah, I feel like that's pretty normal.
I think so too. A lot of the changes that came out yesterday were literally like things added to the tooltips, or like correcting word like misspellings, right? Like, which I think
Right.
is low key kind of exciting. It shows that they're very much adjusting these things as they do the tuning. So like we are gonna have the feelings of like this is very much an experimental season, right? Like season of discoveries. Yep. Blizzard has even stated they are discovering things at the same time we are discovering things. And it literally shows as you see some of the things like actually just have like their wording changes.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the fact that it's an experimental season, I think, is going to make it that much more fun. You know, we don't really know what each week is going to bring. You know, there could be crazy changes, there could be no changes. Things are constantly going to be getting balanced. So I do think it adds an entire new level of fun and things to figure out every week. And there's going to be so many new metas forming. It's going to be great.
Yeah, the meta changes. You know what it's reminiscent of in a good and bad way? I don't know if you played a lot of Diablo 4 on launch, but every time you discovered a broken build, they nerfed it the next day. I hope that doesn't happen so much, because I like the idea of being able to discover something that's like really strong. And then like maybe in the future they'll say like, we will lower this. I think adjusting things beforehand is really good, but there's going to be a lot of tuning.
These adjustments are bringing things down to like a realm of like normalcy, right? Where like everything is kind of balanced right now. I'm sure on launch and like when we actually start playing, there's going to be things that are just out of control, broken still.
Yep.
And those things will get be brought down as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's no beta, so this is kind of
yeah, we're doing it live.
Going in blind. Yeah,
we're doing it live, and it looks like we will have seal twisting. It looks like a lot of the things that were in the game for original classic are still going to be there. Some things that are key, like warriors will still be able to heroic strike Q. They should still be able to heroic strike Q, which is going to be ridiculous for rage gen, especially at these lower levels when you're not hitting really hard as a warrior and you don't have flurry. Like having extra rage is one of the strongest things you could do. And it actually, warriors now with theory crafting and more testing and stuff, warriors are looking like they could be one of the strongest classes actually, which is originally when I tested warrior myself at BlizzCon, it didn't feel that good, but I didn't have Wind Fury,
right,
which sucks as a warrior.
Exactly, yeah. And I would imagine with Wind Fury, obviously things are going to change, right? Like that's going to feel so good.
Yeah.
I mained Warrior back in 2019 Classic. It honestly was my favorite class until I discovered how much I love Warlock. But I would like to see Warriors be better than we originally thought, because I think it's one of the most fun classes to play in vanilla, especially. And yeah, I mean, they even got some buffs to tanking, right? To kind of bring them up to par with the other new tanks.
Yep, absolutely. The warrior changes, it's interesting. Warriors actually got like a little bit of a nerf yesterday too, but the one class that was looking the weakest, and it kind of did in every respect, unfortunately, was Priest. And they got a huge buff. Circle of Healing went from 15 yards to 40 yards, which is ginormous of a buff. And the healing got like tripled. So Circle of Healing, hugely more powerful. And one thing that was a big issue for priests is when you used to bubble warrior tanks, or if you bubbled like your feral druid tank, they couldn't get any rage while the bubble was up. Well, that has been adjusted. So now while you have Power Word Shield up on your warriors and stuff, it will act as if they're actually taking damage, so they will have rage generation. I think that's a really, really good change.
Oh yeah, definitely. Priests. That's gonna make a big difference for priests.
Yeah, and you said Warlock, because you're gonna go Warlock. Warlocks had their metamorphosis threat generation reduced from 100% increased threat gen to 50%. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely needed, because coming down to 50%, it's going to kind of put it on par, right, with warriors and paladins. And realistically, the only thing I think that may change is like maybe some of your gear, right? You may want to be able to gear up to be able to produce a little bit more threat, but ultimately, I still think they're going to be super strong. I mean, 500% armor increase is just absolutely insane.
Yes.
So I'm actually surprised they didn't nerf that.
We were okay. I could even pull something up really fast, like so, and like last time, maybe it was us talking about it, but I thought it was just someone was telling me it was just armor from their gear, but it's not. It's all armor. So like if you're sitting here at 440 armor and then getting 500% armor increase on that, your damage mitigation is so crazy as
You're just
a warlock.
not taking damage. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just like not really getting hit. This has to be, I'm so curious what they're gonna be trying to do to fix this in respect for PvP, because this is like, this one rune I think is the most busted PvP rune ever. 6% reduced chance to get crit, 500% armor, life tap is way more powerful, you have instant searing pain, so instant cast damage, you have a charge, like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all armor.
And all of that, you're still able to, be fearing people and, doing all that. You have your Void Walker, you have 2 sacrifices, right? So think about all that armor and how tanky you are, and then also having to get through 2 Void Walker sacks, if you go Fell Domination. It's like, that rune basically makes them, like, in my opinion, almost unkillable, at least in any 1v1 situation.
Yes, I totally agree. I think, so the interesting one is Warlock tank damage, I would say from the PTR BlizzCon felt ridiculously low, which I think is a good thing because they felt like such a strong tank. So at least hopefully in PvP, if you're running this rune, maybe you won't be able to just like pump people down, but this rune itself is so good. It changes like the class entirely. It's way more happening in one rune than literally any other rune in the game.
And you take this rune and combine it with other talents, in PvP, like Master Channeler, right? So you're just going to also have, not only are you going to be extremely tanky, right? You're also going to have like decent self-sustain and be mobile and like, I don't know. I think nerfing the threat generation by 50% was a good change. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Like when we play it, like if you're saying their damage has just felt pretty low, maybe it was too much. They may like fix it and bump it up a little bit if they're having an issue completely like holding threat. But it is classic, right? And like threat is supposed to be a big part of tanking.
Absolutely.
And it's not supposed to be super easy, so it might work out perfectly.
Yeah, I think that reining in the threat generation there with 100 from 100% to 50%. I was looking at some numbers, and I believe now this change also happened, by the way, guys, to shamans. Their 100% increased threat gen from one rune was brought down to 50%. It brings them now to like a normal realm of tanking. They used to have like 200% threat gen compared to any other tank, and now everyone has a modifier around 150%. I think Rogue with talents, or maybe it's Warrior with talents, goes up 145.9% or 149.5, something ridiculous. Okay, we're getting to the weeds, whatever. I'm obviously a huge nerd for this stuff, but this like the crazy thing that like I did see people freaking out about this. I tweeted saying, don't worry, it changes nothing really, is that like instead of running up and doing one shadow cleave, which instead of your shadow bolt you have this melee cleave, and having instant threat on everything, you still just use searing pain, which has a threat modifier on it, and now instead of it being like 700% threat, it's 450% threat or something. You're fine. You're not gonna have any issues with threat. Classic WoW does feel like you always need to like hold off for like a Sunder or two. I don't think you're ever gonna need to do that. I think every tank got buffed so strongly in Season of Discovery that you're never gonna have. I mean, realistically, you never really did that anyways, and then you just like yelled at your tank for not holding aggro, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And like you're saying, like
Uh,
Searing Pain is going to be so much threat. You're basically going to just be tab targeting Searing Pain, just like you
yeah,
would tab Sunder on a warrior.
yeah. Like last week on the podcast, we were talking, and Crix was like, having AOE threat was hard. I was like, what do you mean, dude? As you're running in, you just hit Searing on every target, and then the second they're all grouped up, you hit with a Shadow Cleave. Now it's all set, and you have a taunt.
Yeah.
Like you've done it. Warlock tanks, you're set, and Shaman tanks, you got reined in a little bit. The big thing for Shaman tanks that got reined in, their threat gen is the exact same. Basically, it got cut like so did Warlock tanks, but they had a frontal cone of cold ability called Molten Blast, and it hit every target in front of you, and on it literally says this ability generates a high amount of threat. So it's like a frontal cone taunt that can hit everything. This has now been reined in, and we don't know how many targets it's going to be capped at, but like at least it's going to be capped.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh man, because it says, if you read it, it says blast up to 0 enemies, right? So I'm assuming they're going to probably put it on par with Shadow Cleave. Like, how many targets does Shadow Cleave hit? Do we know?
3 right now. I think it's going to be stronger for some reason, because this is shamans are the horde's equivalent of paladin, right? And paladin does have a lot of AoE threat, but paladin's AoE threat really needs to ramp up no matter what. Even getting an 80% threat modifier in Season of Discovery, consecration still needs to really ramp up. I think Molten Blast is still going to be really strong. I think it's going to be 4 to 6 targets. I have no basis whatsoever on deciding that. It just feels
it makes
right.
Sense.
And for some reason, a lot of these changes have happened to like what feels right. So I think it is. I think it's exciting. I think Molten Blast getting reined in is good. Shamans actually, realistically, Shamans just basically got all buffed. Their Shamanistic Rage now, on top of increasing the damage you do, increases your mana generation and shares that mana generation with the rest of the group. And they got like double the mana return from their tanking rune. Whenever they block, they were getting 4% mana back to themselves. And now that literally is up to 8%. So Shamans got raw buffed. It was it feels really good. I think Shaman tanks feel really good. They're a fun class, and they feel actually a lot like a classic World of Warcraft tank. They like, when playing it, it felt like playing like a warrior tank with a shield, but like more abilities. And Earth Shock is like,
yeah, I mean, and it looks fun. You know, I'm not normally a big Shaman player, but I definitely at some point I'm gonna be testing out Shaman tank. It just looks like a ton of fun to play.
Agreed. Yeah, I like Enhanced Shaman and Spell Hand Shaman a lot in Wrath of the Lich King, and I think this is gonna be a really good change for him. Rogues also got a slight buff to their normal combat builds that are maces and swords. Saber Slash had its energy cost reduced by 10. This is going to make Saber Slash a lot more used instead of just trying to stack the debuff that it puts up. The bleed, that's a good one. Let me see which other classes got changed. Mage Healers got a little buff. Their rewind time had its like crazy CD of 1 minute brought down to 30 seconds. Still, I think Mage Healers are like relatively niche since like the other changes that happened beforehand, but I think they're still just really strong. I think you bringing in a Mage Healer as your second healer to a raid seems really nice, because they're outputting so much damage, and then out of nowhere they just full heal your tank or something, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially like as the phase goes on, right? People are geared like clearing it a little bit faster. Having your second healer be mage, right? So you basically have 9 DPS and kind of like a second off healer.
Yeah,
I think that's honestly gonna be the meta.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some people in chat too making really good points. It looks like the Sage from Final Fantasy, or like it's not like your main healer. It tends to like, doesn't feel like it'll be the most powerful main healer. It'll be a really solid off heal. And I think the last changes that we didn't talk about was for warriors. So warriors had their rune Consumed by Rage was giving you 25% melee damage, which is all of your damage. 25% damage for 12 seconds. and instead now it's 20% damage for 12 seconds whenever you go past 80 rage. So you'll end up like sitting there stacking rage, and then once you hit 80, you'll literally use like one heroic strike and then wait a second and then go back up to 80 rage, and there's no cooldown on it right now. At least there wasn't at BlizzCon. So you literally could just keep going up there and you just have permanent 20% damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and losing 5% on that, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. I think, you know, and after all of the, I've been like reading and watching a ton of stuff too.
Yeah.
And my initial take on Warriors, which maybe was a hot take, was that they were just going to be down in the dumps. But it's starting to kind of make sense to me now that a little more that they might not be. I think they're going to perform a lot better than most people originally thought.
Yes.
DPS wise, especially. Yeah.
Absolutely. I went back and looked at the damage meters that SFan had up when I was running Warrior, and I had no, let me see if I can find it. I had no Wind Fury and stuff, and I was running Warrior and I was still at like 115 DPS. It felt decently strong. It felt really weak. But my damage was actually relatively strong, which is interesting. Yeah, it was actually okay. So I felt really weak, but my damage was okay. That's a terrible fight right there. So I think Warriors are going to be really good for both specs, two-handed and also for dual wield. I think dual wield is going to be better. I switched to dual wield pretty quickly. I think dual wield is going to be better at this level for sure. Your rage generation just feels significantly better at these lower levels with dual wield. I think that's your main issue, is rage generation. I think the runes for Warriors get brought back, like they get reined in. Mainly this one, right? Consumed by rage or anything else that gives them percentage buffs. Everyone else in this expansion or in Season of Discovery is getting like all these cool new abilities, all these cool things to do, and Warriors are getting like one more ability and some like percentage buffs. But Warriors, every single thing that's ever happened in Classic WoW scales Warriors more and more and more and more. Like if you do slightly more damage, you get more rage. If you hit faster, you crit more, which gives you more rage, which gives you more damage, which allows you to AoE. Like Warriors are the only class that had that, like everything that makes you stronger like exponentially makes you stronger. So I think at higher levels, I genuinely think they have to like rein some of this in. Like this 20% I think goes down in the next bracket because you get 30% haste with flurry.
Right. And when you were testing out Warrior, did you guys have access to like the Black Fathom sharpening stones and like what was like the gear that you had on?
The gear is
it wasn't like any of the new craftable gear or anything like that?
No, we hadn't seen any of that yet. So you have no hit rating whatsoever. But it actually doesn't matter too much for hit rating if you heroic strike Q, which I think everyone's gonna end up doing. I think the two-handed build with quick strike, I tried that too. I think it felt less strong than the dual wield build, but that also again very, very limited because I didn't have Wind Fury in the run that I was running Warrior with. I think Warrior looks like it would be a weaker class right away, but that's kind of like a bait. I think Warrior is actually pretty good. So
yeah, I think they're going to be a lot better than we thought.
So we have about 40 minutes, which is now that we've talked about all the class changes, we need to hit this relatively fast. And I apologize for us being so rushed. This is just what life is, unfortunately. How do you play Season of Discovery? You don't need to download anything. Well, you will need to download just Classic World of Warcraft, and there should just be realms for it. So just have Classic, the version of Classic. Yeah. Okay. So let's run through these. I'm curious your take initially, and then I don't know if this is. I feel like this is okay. If there's a Giga Chat, their Giga Chat S is S. We're not really talking yet about things being stackable, and this is only level 25 right now. There's really not like a C tier like I'm saying dumpster as a meme just to enrage people watching this so that you comment, which increases the engagement. Thanks. But like dumpster's not really a good description, and we're looking directly at PvE right now. Okay. All right.
All right.
Frost Mage, how do you feel?
Frost, I would say, would be around A tier for me. I think it's going to do decent damage, but I don't think it's going to be top.
I think Frost Mage has a few things that make it really strong. Frost Mage gets like Fingers of Frost. Let me see if I can just fingers. Yeah, all right. Frost Mage gets Fingers of Frost, yeah, which allows them to just act as if the target is frozen so that they basically get their increased crit chance. I don't even know if Frost Mages get that increased crit chance yet at level 25. They get Icy Veins, which also increases your haste. I feel like Frost Mage is the weakest though. I think Frost needs a lot more levels at 25. I think you have to go Fire or Arcane. I would like to put it in B tier, not Dumpster Fire tier, but I think just the other mage classes or specs feel a lot stronger. And yeah, you might even still use Burnout as well. That's for Frost. You're just getting 15% crit. Okay, right? Some of these runes, man. Here you go. By the way, here's 15% crit. Have fun. Everything costs 1% more base mana. Oh no. Yeah, they do get Ice Lance. They're gonna be crazy for PvP, but for PvE directly, if we're looking directly in like a raid and situation for PvE, I think Frost goes into a relatively B tier right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But with that being said, I think Fire looks really, really strong. Fire and Arcane are looking like some of the strongest things. Arcane is like both healer and damage. Fire Mage, the only issue I could see mages, the main issue I could see mages having is gonna be mana or hit percentage, right? Casters need hit against bosses. It's what, 17% hit, and the good thing about mage is for Arcane, you have one talent right now that gives you 10% hit. That's the most busted talent of all time. Each 1 point gives you 2% hit for Arcane spells.
Yeah, that is pretty busted. And I mean, if we're still going off of Fire Mage worrying about mana, the nerf to Ret Paladins may have actually bumped them up a little bit because a ton more mana.
Yeah, agreed. Which is very, very good, right? Like the changes to Ret and enhancement, right, give you a ton more mana.
Yeah, I would put Fire in a solid S tier, in my opinion.
And then Arcane, how would you rate Arcane?
I think Arcane would be right next to Fire in S tier. I think it's going to be kind of the same issue with mana, but again, now that we're going to have a bigger mana battery, having Red Paladins, I think it'll be right up there. I think that Fire will do more damage, like raw damage, but I think Arcane will be competitive with that.
I actually completely agree. I mean, we have yet to see, like, the way Arcane Blast works isn't the same as the way it works in any other version of the game. Arcane Blast doesn't just like get spammed to do more damage itself and cost more mana. It costs more mana every time you use a subsequent Arcane Blast, and then it buffs the other abilities that are arcane. So I think Fire looks really good. It gets some really fun runes. It's definitely a good, very solid class, I think, in the S tier for sure. Ret Paladin used to be in Giga Chad tier, and I like that whoever made this tier list thing was like, by the way, it's wheelchair, because it's wheelchair in every single version of the game. And as a Ret rogue main for almost most versions of WoW, it's always like the slowest. Why are we so slow?
I mean, to me, for Ret now, even after the nerfs, I still think Ret is going to be an absolute pumper. I don't think it's Giga Chad tier anymore. I would personally have it as S, but I think it may still be above Mage, if that makes sense.
I think single target DPS for Ret right now is still above mage as well, especially with seal twisting. The big caveat I have, they took quite a large damage loss from in single target from losing how often they can use Crusader Strike, like 4 seconds to 6 seconds. It's only 2 seconds longer, but that's literally 50% of the entire CD. So you get to use it way less often. And if they change it so that Crusader Strike does not proc seals, they're gonna get really a lot weaker. One of the best things though for paladins is the weapon they have access to, right? Like ret paladins in classic never really got much of abilities anyways. They were auto attack simulator, and changing that with these runes literally already just changes them to be able to do things, which literally brings them completely, like their class is completely online kind of at this level already. So
yeah, and we're gonna have access to what's it called? Is it Varigan's Fist?
yeah, Virgin's Fist. I've always loved Virgin's Fist, so you can grab that right away, and it's gonna be really strong. Yeah, so I think red are gonna be fun. You can still run around and delete people probably in PvP. You won't have like crazy crit rating, you know, and you can't reckoning bomb them yet. You're having a great time.
Oh yeah, you'll have Wind Fury, you'll have your Casino.
Yeah,
Crusader Strike, Divine Storm, Judgment. It's like a lot of buttons to press, honestly, for Paladin.
Which is so different from like what you used to have, where you literally had like nothing to press, right? Like you can exorcist anyone, right? You can exorcist any demons to crit them. Sorry, warlocks coming in hot.
Yeah, exorcism too. Yeah. Yep.
We talked about this last week, but like the meta is honestly, and I really think this is probably going to be like have a macro where you swap to a shield really fast to Avenger's shield and then swap back.
Yeah.
That's
a little gap closer.
Yeah, exactly. And then I don't know with weapon swings if like Crusader Strike would then start a weapon swing timer, which is like a thing. Like when you would weapon swing as a rogue or weapon swap as a rogue, you would always do it right after a weapon swing, and you would weapon swap and use an ability right away, so you didn't feel like you're having much downtime. You would do like a similar thing with like weaving weapons, which is getting way more technical than probably most people need to know right now. I do want to say, Ashley West, thank you again for the super chat. Another one, which, wait, let me read this really fast. When you say busted out loud, they change things before we see it. I tried to make a tweet about that. I felt bad. I was like, wow, the Ret Paladin nerfs that went out and the Hunter nerfs, I was mid-editing of a video saying these classes are the too strong. Like I was like, these are the strongest classes, you know?
So you're solely responsible for the Ret nerf, dude.
Dude, there was a time in Wrath of the Lich King where every night I would make a video on something being busted, and then the next day they would nerf it.
I remember. I was watching all of your videos at that time.
Yeah, and every Discord was like, "Fuck this Sarth guy," and I was like, "God damn it, I'm sorry." I didn't. They were already gonna. I promise it wasn't me. I tried to like ping someone on their team, and I was like, "You guys aren't just doing this. So I'm making these videos, right? You're not just trolling me right now in the whole community." They're like, "No, all of these changes just happen to be coming out right after you made the video." I was like, "Okay, thank gosh."
Yeah.
But I'm glad the changes we got today, like the nerfs and buffs last night, happened when they did, because it like my class picking guide was coming out this morning. Remember, I messaged you right after yours came out yesterday morning, and I was like, I'm almost done with mine. I had to rework so many things in mine. Yeah, I
know. Yeah, that's the hardest part about this, is like getting these videos out, and now all these changes happen. So I'm like, do I make an entirely new video, or do I go back and like pinning comments at the top like, hey, I would change this, I would change this? But it all of this is going to be changing so much that, like, I mean, literally next week, something we talk about today could be completely irrelevant. But I guess that's just the fun of it, right?
Yeah, like Shadow being dumpster tier, Shadow could be Giga Chad next week. They could decide, Shadows, we don't love you right now, but we really, really love you. Homunculi looks like one of the most fun runes of all time. It gives you like 3 mini versions of yourself, and they put up like all of the debuffs that matter: armor debuff, armor or attack speed debuff, and one more. Why can't I think? Whatever. Shadow Priest does need love though.
Attack power, attack speed, attack power, and armor.
Yep, you're right. All right.
Yep.
How would you rate Shadow Priest? I feel like they are at level 25. They're in a rough spot. But I'm curious your take.
I personally, I don't know. I don't think anything is really dumpster, but they may be bottom B tier, in my opinion. Like, they're gonna do damage, right? But I don't think that they're gonna do competitive damage. Like, I honestly think Frost Mage would do more damage than Shadow Priests.
I think Shadow Priest is gonna have like crazy burst, and I used to have a level 29 Twink Shadow Priest because in TBC you could get the enchant Soul Frost at 29 from a quest in Altar or Arathi Basin that counted as a level 36 weapon. And I think they're gonna have like this really strong burst. Their issue right now is mana. If you're looking at it, their issue right now at this level is mana. And I know the ret changes and the enhancement changes, well, shaman in general changes really helps that. I don't know if it's enough yet. So I think Shadow Priests at this level are missing some things. One thing I think is really exciting is the idea that you can learn the other abilities that other like races get as a priest. That's like the big reason why you had to go dwarf priest for alliance, so that you would get fear ward. And for horde, like, I think devouring plague is so fun. It's so strong whenever you get to use it, but it costs like an insane amount of mana, I like that Agron just said, just keep your head on a swivel. And that's like we were just saying, right? There's like anything we talk about, like the next day can completely change. Shadow Priest's problem right now is most likely looking like it's going to be mana, but I think any class's gripes that we have, that's like what they're actively looking at, right? Like rogues have no cleave. I mentioned this in my video this morning, my class picking video. Rogues are the worst class ever for having the ability to cleave. They have a 2-minute CD that allows you to hit 2 targets. I think at the higher levels they change that, because every class, like Shadow Priests, are getting like a literal Mind Seer, which is a full cleave, right? And I don't think it hits super hard yet, but if you pull a lot of targets, it's really strong.
I guess for AoE damage, I think they would be not bad, but single target is where I think they would be bottom B tier.
Yeah, I agree. I think they go into this B, and the difference between all of these is really small here, guys. We're level 25. The difference between an A and S tier DPS is like 7 DPS or something. You know?
Yeah,
like,
see, that was the logic behind my tier list that I did, dude. That's why I did just like S, A, and like B. I think I was like, I mean, everything is gonna feel like good, you know, compared to what it was before, and everyone is gonna do damage. Like you said before, it's not gonna be like red pallies aren't gonna just be standing there auto attacking, right? So like these differences are not. They might not be that big, you know.
And we're here for like 6 weeks or something, right? Like it's like level 25 is so fast. Just play all the classes and like whatever the root of the class you really like, that you can use a lot more towards the higher levels, which I think is nice. On that note, though, I talk about rogue, assassination rogue. Actually, interestingly, you will run assassination rogue if you're the mutilate build, and then you'll run combat if you're any of the other 2 builds. So rogue, I think you can combine all of the rogue and combat and assassination. You can just combine it as rogue if we were looking at it at tier list, specifically because the DPS differentials are really small. Although I do want to let everyone know that saw my rogue guide, I went over all of the rotations and all of the specs. There was one thing wrong with the simulations, that it was counting Saber Slash buff or debuff on each spec, and that has been adjusted. Simonize is really fast at catching anything, and it's like an early version of the sim, so that's been adjusted. Rogue feels really strong single target. They have one rune that is like my favorite rune ever, but it has no support from any of the other runes, because if you use it, none of your other runes are actually useful, and it is the backstab rune. Slaughter from the Shadows reduces the energy cost of ambush and backstab by 20.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that feels so good, dude. Oh, it feels so good. This one feels so good, and it makes me so excited for the higher levels. I think exactly what Agron just said in the chat. If anyone's just listening to this, don't chase the meta at 25. Play the class that speaks to you. So much is going to change between now and 60, and it's really now like what class feels the best to you. And this makes me so happy for Rogue as a Rogue lover. Like, this feels so good. And then rogues have ranged kidney shot. They have a ranged slow, so if anyone ever gets out of your range, it's like, get back here, I got you. They have you have a,
and you're gonna get that ranged kidney before 30, right?
Yeah,
you know, so
Rogue feels really strong as a Rogue player, and I've seen a lot of people say that they think Rogue feels weak, and Rogue feels so good. Yeah.
I mean, where would you place it?
I think actually in single target damage, I think Rogue will be competitive as like one of the very top, but I can't tell if that's copium with like rose tinted goggles, right? So like, I'm curious your take, because like, I personally am like, get out of here, Rogue's the best. Not number one.
Yeah.
It's not like, especially earlier it was like Rhett and then Hunter, and but like Rogue feels really solid. So I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, for single target DPS, definitely think they're going to be like almost leader of the pack. They're going to be up there, right? But like you said, like they lack the AoE, the cleave. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, because then you would take other classes, right? Like Rhett, Fire Mage, these classes that will have decent single target DPS and some cleave and a nice amount of AoE, right?
Yeah.
So those, in my opinion, would still be ranked higher because they have a little bit of both. So maybe Rogue would be like A tier or behind Rhett and Mage in S. But I think that the lack of AoE and cleave, it would be the only thing holding them back from being like true S tier.
I kind of like the idea of having, like, I'm like, what am I gonna put in A tier anyways, right? Like, how else are people gonna get mad in the comments if we don't have something in A tier? So
I mean, it makes sense, right? Their damage is like S tier.
Yeah, their damage,
single target, but without like cleave and AoE, there's got to be something to differentiate between like our mages and red paladins that do have a little bit of both.
And you're
right, and a decent amount of both, actually.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like overall, if we're looking at like overall, generally, this is like a very solid, like, mages. Yeah, mages already have a ton of AoE, and we're level 25 again, right? Like these boss fights are like 2 to 5 minutes long. Some of them have cleave, some of them won't. I think rogues just, it feels nice, and it feels very genuine to the classic Rogue experience. As someone who, I used to min-max Rogue to such obnoxious levels, which it's so funny because it's such a small thing. Rogue has, you have Sinister Strike or Backstab, and then you keep up Slice and Dice, and then like you have your CDs with Blade Flurry and Adrenaline Rush. Like, that's it.
Yep.
But uptime is huge. The difference between the top rogues and anyone else was really, really big. And I used to do like all of these podcasts where we would get together the guys. It's all the same people that we would always have like the top 5 in the world. We'd always get the top 5 rankings in the world, and you'd get all together, and like, it's such small things. And now that we have Wind Fury for Alliance and Horde, this is a big thing, guys. Wind Fury procs reset your weapon swing, which means you have to track your weapon swings and use all of your abilities right after a weapon swing. That is going to be a small DPS thing at low levels. If it still happens, it's going to be a larger DPS thing at higher levels. That adds some skill to it. That's so fun. So rogues,
and Wind Fury now is going to be a buff, right? There's nothing that indicates that it goes on your weapon like a Wind Fury totem.
It doesn't. You can use the sharpening stones, which give you hit percentage, which are crazy. You can use instant poisons. Wind Fury as a buff on druids made druids like feral DPS at this level, I think, is weak, but they are just like every group is like, give me the feral in my group,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Which
Feral's coming everywhere with me when I'm on my pally.
yeah, I guess we can talk about it really quickly. I think feral DPS feels like it's in a less amazing spot at this rank level.
Yeah.
A lot of things is like you're missing a lot of your toolkit, your talents. It's hard to get like which talents you're going for. You grab Furor, which allows you to shift into cat form and like power shift, but you only get 40 energy instead of like having Wolf's Head Helm on top of that, which I actually have up on a different tab. So
yeah, and I mean, think about it, at level 25, like shapeshifting mana cost is like, I feel like you'd start running into like you'd probably be able to shift 3 or 4 times and then be
yeah, you have issues there. You don't have Omen of Clarity. You don't have Ferocious Bite. You don't have some of your bleeds. I think feral DPS are not in a great spot in 25. But the buff you bring is so great, and like apparently the feral Discord has data mined like that you might even get like Tiger's Fury, which would just instantly give you a ton of energy, as well as there's apparently like a Thrash in the code that's an uncapped AoE.
Whoa, I did not see that.
I haven't actually even seen it,
Really?
and I'm not even in any of the, well, I think I'm in a lot of the class Discords, but I don't really use Discord, but people kept pinging me about it. So I haven't
Okay.
seen it, and I didn't look, I didn't chase it. But if that's a thing, holy Shinokus.
Yeah, if that's a thing, that could change some stuff.
Yeah, so I'm very intrigued to see how would you rate it right now. I would personally, I guess, go into the B tier, but their buff is like Giga Chad.
Yeah, I'd say based off of the information that we have right now, right? Data mining Thrash aside, let's pretend we didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Just because of the buff, I would put them, like top of B tier. I mean, they could go bottom A, but I don't think they're going to come close to Rogues when it comes to single target damage. So I would say B tier.
I think so as well. I
just because it's like, and they're going to be absolutely like every group is going to want one, right? So
yeah, I literally you're gonna fight for the feral in your group. 1 second, let me check who I'm supposed to run with to Hunter really fast. So let me just get into the raid before I get in trouble. All right, we have to blast through this. We have 18 minutes because the guild, we're gonna break the world records again, just as memes, because we're just bored. So we just keep doing it on our splits. So let me just get into the group. Okay, all right. Yeah, so the feral buff is only group wide, just like Wind Fury. There are some things that are raid wide. It looks like the shaman and paladin healing is raid wide. It's not even out yet, and that change happened yesterday, so I'm not even sure if that is. I have no idea. But on that note, enhanced shaman. How do you feel about enhanced shaman?
Enhanced shaman. Let's see. Let me pull up my build here. I feel like enhanced shaman is going to be okay, right? It's gonna be fun to play for sure, but I don't think it's going to really be competitive as far as like going into maybe like the rogue tier. I do think enhanced would probably be around B tier. Just because I do feel like, oh, hold on 1 sec here, I'm lagging out.
No worries.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear. I actually heard you perfectly that whole time. It might be on your stream. Oh, can you hear me?
Say something?
I could hear you. I could hear you perfectly. La 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 la.
Again? Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wow, everything just went black and then came back for like 10 seconds.
Interestingly enough, I could see you and hear you perfectly. I'm curious if stream could, but I was able to hear you perfectly.
Okay, everything's good now?
Yes. Welcome back.
Okay, yeah. All right, so yeah, enhancement shamans, I would put them B tier. Sorry, I know we gotta speed this up a little bit.
No. I think, yeah, I think enhancement shamans are very consistent damage. You don't have Wind Fury, obviously, but you don't need Wind Fury. I think it's very consistent damage. I think B tier is a good place to put them. I think this isn't like a B tier. It's just like not overpowered.
Well, we'll have Wind Fury, right? If we have a feral in the group.
Yeah, but they don't need to bring that buff individually, right? I think their damage.
Right. Yeah.
can beat the Feral, but I think Feral bringing in the Wind Fury group makes them stronger. I think Enhance like ramps up, like ramps later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Enhanced we would put it above Frost Mage and Shadow Priest,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Ellie Shaman. I think Ellie Shaman DPS feels strong. I don't know if they had mana issues yet, and I want to say we might get even a Bloodlust eventually, but Ellie Shamans are gonna obnoxiously delete people at level 60. It's I think yeah, everyone has mana issues and spell hit is an issue, right? Ellie Shaman,
Yeah.
maybe I would put it, I guess, with the Enhanced Shaman also.
Yeah, right under Feral.
For now, if I'm just being fast, mainly because of the mana issues, I think you get a lot of cool spells. Lava Burst is awesome, and it makes it really fun. And you have a literal, there's one of these runes that Overload that is a thing in later versions of the game where every one of your casts has a 1 in 3 chance of just casting another one for free. Like,
oh yeah,
that's crazy. The big issue is you don't have Chain Lightning, but sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is mainly why I would say Ellie Shamans are gonna be not, more than just a little bit stronger at this level than Enhancement Shamans. Like Overload is just actually ridiculous, and then you have Lava Burst and Shamanistic Rage to help you with mana, right? So I think they're gonna do some damage.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot more fun. Ellie Shaman at this level, the Shaman at this level runs out of mana no matter what. Like Shamanistic Rage is gonna be essential, or Water Shield. But you'll run with Shamanistic Rage, get some mana back. It's gonna be very helpful. Balanced Druids literally never run out of mana now. I don't think their damage is S tier potentially. I think they go into the A tier though, because they can't run out of mana.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, I mean, just being able to just spam Wrath forever without having to worry at all about mana, right off the bat, makes them better than B tier.
Yeah, like you can, for leveling, and this is the thing, like you're gonna just go into, like, once we're done with 25, which is over very quickly, you're just gonna level to 40, and to never ever run out of mana while leveling, and get because their Wrath costs 0, but it also procs their Healing Touch to be literally instant cast.
Yeah,
you'll never stop.
Yeah,
this is like the Giga Chad levelings. I mean, Arcane or Mages still are Giga Chad levelings, and Hunters get even better at leveling. But this is like, wow, this is super good. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, when I first read that,
really happy.
I was like, wait, did I read that correctly?
Yeah,
just doesn't cost mana. Okay, got it.
I was like, are you? Wait a second.
Yeah.
No,
they had to do a double take.
Wrath
for that one.
costs 0, reduces mana cost by 100%. I mean, technically, this is probably mostly meant for healers, but not really, because it is purely like Wrath. I don't know if at this level is your highest damage dealing ability. I anticipate it would do like 125 damage per Wrath, which is pretty significant. You could just, I mean, you're in PvP tournaments, which we're still trying to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out running this first PvP tournament a couple days in. Like Druids are always about just like outliving everyone, and I think they'll be able to do that. You could just fight forever.
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Warlock was in this Giga Chad tier. Warlock DPS didn't get nerfed. Warlock tanking was in this Giga Chad tier. I don't think.
Yeah.
Crix loves to say that Warlock damage was in the Giga Chad tier. It's his birthday, so I can't say it's in dumpster fire. How do you feel about Warlock?
I would definitely say that like Fire Destruction is going to be a lot of damage, right? So I think if I had to take a look at, you have Lake of Fire, right? That's increasing your fire damage from you and your pet by 40% for 15 seconds, right? And then you can weave in Incinerates in there. I just think their AoE is going to be phenomenal, and I think that their single target is going to be good. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, I think
caveat,
Rain of Fire might actually be like one of the best AoEs at level 25.
My only caveat for Warlock is like, can you hit anything? That's it. Like, that's my caveat, right? I think Warlock is. I think I'm totally fine with Warlock going in S tier. I think their AoE, like a Shadow Bolt cleave hits 5 targets for like 90% of the damage or 80% of the damage. That's crazy. That's crazy. Their AoE is just bonkers city. And I think Affliction really doesn't feel very good right now, but it will as it like ramps and you get more things. Maybe it's not that it doesn't feel very good. It's just like gonna ramp. I think Destro, the Fire Destro build is up there. The Warlock tank is always amazing. I want to put Demo down here just so that if someone ever sees this and screenshots it, they can get mad at me. Yeah. So
so S tier, you'd agree?
Yeah, I do agree with all my chagrin. I do agree. Fury Warrior, you want to know the interesting thing? I think Fury Warrior is insane. What are your thoughts? I'm just choosing Warrior as DPS. Arms and Fury, I'm just I think if you play it correct, look at it as a whole. I think if you play it correctly with the new Wind Fury and you play with like the runes like I showed earlier, if you play with like runes, like if you go a DPS warrior, and these runes weren't even my idea. This is very similar to what I was running on the beta. I even thought you would run Flagellation, Consumed by Rage, and Single-Minded Fury, and I think you're just going to be, if you're playing around that 80 energy, 80 rage, they're going to be super, super, super strong. Fury Warrior also just like, this is going to be the hardest thing for the classic team to do, is just tone things down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and you got to think about it. You'll have decent single target damage, right? Especially if you're heroic strike queuing.
Yeah.
And you have cleave right at this level, so you're going to have decent AoE cleave for trash packs and things like that. And then like most of this just raw damage buff. So I would say S tier.
Where in the S tier would you rate them?
I would put Fury.
Ooh, indeed.
I don't. Oh man, I don't know if I want to put them above Ret Mages and Destro Locks, but they might actually be.
I want to do it just because I know people are gonna go crazy about it, and then I'm doing it. I'm sorry. All right, if anyone gets the blame, it's me, not hammerdance. I'm doing it because it's hilarious.
The top of S tier right now.
I thought Warrior was going to be terrible early on. It felt very weak. It feels bad about the rage generation, but I think if you play it correctly, it's going to be really, really strong. And also getting the hit from your 4% hit from the BFD Sharpening Stones. I think they're going to be middle of the pack in PvP. Really, they don't get that much good other than Warbringer right now in PvP, but I think you're actually gonna be surprised. I think you can never discount the Fury Warriors in Fight Club. They figure it out. I feel like I thought it was gonna be ramps later tier, and I think it might actually end up being really good. And I think this is the hottest of hot takes.
Yeah, no, I actually completely agree with you. Like you said, also you're getting 4% hit from the stones, right? And then if you go leatherworking and craft the physical DPS gloves,
yep,
you get another % hit right there. And I'm pretty sure
heroic strike Q, right?
Yeah. And what's the on use with those gloves? Was it 10 attack speed?
10% haste, dude. It's wild.
Yeah. That's pretty nutty. So yeah, I think Fury is going to be a lot better than we thought, or arms, whatever.
Yeah. I think I'm just raking it all together as DPS, and I'm sorry guys, just because of I have like 5 minutes. Okay, and that just leaves us with Hunter. Oh wow, that just leaves us with Hunter. Hunter was up here, sitting up here with Ret Paladin, sitting like, hey, we're Giga Chads and we can kill anything. and then Blizzard watched the video I was editing yesterday and was like, suck it, bro. Instead of 30% crit, you get 10%. Instead of 25% damage, you get 15. And I think they're still S tier. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking at them as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Every spec?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say Hunter is still S tier. Like you said, we got sniper training. Only works on your shots, right? So it's not autos.
Yep.
So it's not that big of a difference. And then what was the other nerf we had here? Let me look at it.
Lone Wolf. But Lone Wolf got nerfed down from 25% to 15%, but you couldn't really run this unless you were the second Hunter. Yeah,
exactly.
and then
And I think that there's going to be multiple hunter specs that are viable, right, in S tier. Like I feel like even Beast Mastery might do really well.
Yeah, and I really think we're gonna have some sort of support towards, like, even right now there is support towards melee weaving. And carve is a literal uncapped cleave. Don't change this, please, guys. This is crazy. This is wow. Wow. FYI, Wowhead Talent Calculator has the updated versions. Oh, guys, you know what's gonna be crazy? Imagine if some of us here are gonna write for Wowhead. Would that mean we're bad at the game? Yeah, all right. Well, I can't give them Wowhead. You can't get too much publicity for free on our podcast. Get out of here. Pay me. Yeah, I think I'm rating it S tier in my personal opinion. There's people talking about traps being no longer needing to be out of combat, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. How would you rate Hunter?
I would definitely put Hunter. It kills me to say this, but I definitely think they're going to do more damage than Fire Destruction Warlocks, right?
I
is
think
it going to
so
be better
too.
than?
They can't. Hunters don't miss, right? And Destro locks. Where's your hit coming from? You have
exactly, and I also think the same. I don't know. I feel like they would do better than Fire, but then if we're basing it off straight hit, then Arcane would be higher than Fire on my list, in my opinion, right? So maybe it goes like Arcane, Hunter, Fire Mage, Destro Lock.
Oh, but I think Fire will still. I think Fire might be able to eke out Arcane because, well, Fire also gets a free 6% hit, which is like,
that's true. Right.
Pretty, like, hit rating in Classic World of Warcraft, for anyone that hasn't played Classic in a long time, is one of the strongest. For almost every class, it is literally the strongest stat until your hit cap, and spellcaster hit cap is ridiculous. Do I have everything I need? Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. I have my pets.
Yeah. So I would say let's put Hunter above Fire Destruction Locks, but below Mage.
Okay.
Makes
perfect.
sense.
Yep. All right. Well, in that case, there it is. If you're happy with this, I'm very happy with this, mainly because I'm worried about having to go.
Yeah, I'm good with it, man. Again, this could change next week. So
this totally can change next week. Mages don't have like Ignite stacking yet, or do they? I don't even know. Doesn't matter right now because we have to go. Fury Warriors S tier. You heard it here first. If they're not, if they are, that's going to be hilarious. That's kind of a shot in the dark, but it's also me being like, never discount Warriors, and I think they can figure things out. They ain't S, no shot. Rockman says they ain't S, no shot. If he's wrong, he has to do the entire Hot Ones challenge, and if I'm wrong, I have to do the entire Hot Ones challenge. This list was only mostly cringy. I agree, and all of these things are probably going to change before we even see the game. I love you guys. Hammerdance, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can watch all your videos.
Yeah, guys, you can find me on YouTube at Hammerdance Gaming and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Hammerdance. This was a lot of fun, so hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Yeah, we will. We'll do, once they change everything after watching this and they're like, ha, suck it. Now Demo Lock's the best. Then we'll do another one, guys. Sorry for the rush. I do apologize for that. It's just timing and stuff. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody who's from NA and stuff. And I love you guys. And Hammerdance, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. And shout out to your grandma who came over to watch your son so we could do this.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I love being on the show, so it was a lot of fun, man.
All right,
everyone, take care.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, dog.
See ya.
Bye.